The war to end all wars was over, but a new one was just beginning on the streets of America. One side was a rising tide of professional criminals who were made richer and bolder by Prohibition. At the other side, the FBI fought to enforce Prohibition.
Real estate developers expected rents to rise as saloons closed and neighborhoods improved. Theaters expected new crowds as Americans looked for new ways to entertain themselves without alcohol. Instead, there was a decline in entertainment industries across the board. Restaurants failed as they could no longer make a profit without legal liquor sales. On the whole, the initial economic effect of prohibition were largely negative. One of the most popular effects was on government tax revenue, cost them a total loss of $11 billion.
Al Capone was a major gang leader in the dry era. His business accumulated great amounts of dough and made him had various nicknames such as Scarface and Big Cheese. He had joined gangs at a very small age, and as he got more experience under the leadership of Torrio, which later makes Al Capone the leader of the gang and makes himself a public figure. Smart and cautious, he gained popularity for selling what people most wanted, beer. At a constant time and under surveillance from the FBI, he was able to commit dozens of murders, and one of his most notorious deeds, the Valentine's Massacre. Killing rival gang members became about and selling in his territory. Chicago was in his hands until the FBI presented charges for tax evasion that led him into an 11-year sentence, which was cut short for good behavior. He was then moved to Alcatraz for obtaining special privileges at the U.S. Penitentiary in Atlanta. His health sharply declined by syphilis and eventually died.
Major supporters of the gangsters range from different types of people, like pharmacists at drugstores distributing whiskey as medication. The gangsters would bribe police and well-known political officials to make the distribution process easier. Although the gangsters had their own breweries and distilleries, they would also import alcohol from Canadian and Mexican borders. The bootleggers that they would hire would distribute all the alcohol to the nightclubs and exclusive speakeasies. The growth of the illegal liquor trade prohibition made criminals of millions of Americans.
Created a new federal medium for fighting crime. The FBI was outgunned and ill-prepared at this point in history to take on the surging national crime. The FBI was for sure no model of efficiency at this time. It was until Edgar Hoover became director in May 10, 1924. He had 650 employees, including 441 special agents who worked in the field offices in 9 cities. In 1928, Hoover established a formal training course for new agents. He wrote a letter to the Attorney General because he knew he could not fight crime without the public support. The real problem of law enforcement in trying to obtain the cooperation and sympathy of the public lied on the fact that they cannot hope to get such cooperation until they themselves merit the respect of the public. In 1924, he created the Identification Division called IDENT. By 1926, law enforcement agencies across the country began contributing fingerprint cards to the FBI. In 1929, the chiefs adopted a system to classify and report crimes and began to collect crime statistics. Another major development was the scientific crime lab. In 1924-1932, lab was fully operational and soon provided scientific examinations and analysis for the FBI and its partners around the country. It was stationed in room 802 of Old Southern Railroad building in Washington, D.C. Despite of all the attempts made by the Bulls, implementation of laws to input morality in society was unsuccessful during the lawless years, although Al Capone was locked away for good in 1931.
Bootleggers had their way because the dry era ended on December 5, 1933. The solutions ended up worse than the problems they set out to solve, and remember that the Constitution is no place for experiments, noble or otherwise.